The HMI might not be the most complex part of your design, but it is one of the most critical elements. On this episode of DevTalk with Rich and Vin, we look at what to design that HMI right the first time. Welcome to DevTalk with Rich and Vin, the 2026 version. How you doing, Vin?
I'm great, Rich. How are you? How were your holidays?
Holidays were really good. We were here in Florida. We had the whole family here. As you know, being a grandparent is awesome. And we were in the swimming pool every day over Christmas. It was really nice.
We weren't in the swimming pool, but it was pretty warm here in the Nashville area over the holiday too. My sister and a friend came down. And of course, as you know, as everyone knows, my son Dominic and his girlfriend had a baby in September. So this was the first Christmas with the new baby. Always fun. I cooked way too much. And spent way too much.
Do you change diapers?
I do change diapers. I have no trouble changing diapers.
Okay.
Always did. Even with Dominic. In fact, funny story, when we adopted him, we had to get him cleared by his doctor to fly home from Texas. And we went to the clinic where the mother had the baby. And we walked in and they needed some stuff done, take the clothes off the baby. And I got right in there and the nurse said, wow, this mother's going to have no time with this baby at all. This guy's going to be way too involved. So I guess I'm more involved than the average person with changing dirty diapers, but yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Things are different everywhere. And, I'd like to start 2026. This is our first podcast for 2026. I'm very excited about it. There's lots of stuff going on. I heard from a friend who's into all this that last year was the year of the snake, and that's when you're supposed to shed a bunch of things because snakes shed things, and this is a year where you're supposed to be growing and investing in things.
Oh, I thought you were saying that you were shedding your hair.
No, the hair got shed a long time ago. Hair got shed a long time ago. But I want to start 2026 by giving a shout out to a couple of people because you never know who's listening. I found out that 3 people that I know who have really nothing to do with embedded systems or electronic design listen to us on a regular basis. There's Mike in Walpole, Mass, who actually does have an electrical degree and runs a car stereo shop in the area, listens all the time. So shout out to Mike for that. There's another Mike in Connecticut who listens all the time, and he's in healthcare and not in health products, but actually in healthcare facilities, managing them. And he listens. And one of my former workshop students from Stevens, I used to do summer workshops there, is a mechanical engineer. And he listens all the time. And he actually, from the workshop, got inspired, and he's doing some stuff with some friends. He has he's doing investments in STEM for young kids and all kinds of stuff. And he listens on a regular basis. So,
so we have at least 3 listeners, you're saying?
Yeah, we definitely have more than 3, but we have those 3. And it made me think, a little bit about product design, because if you don't know who your audience is, you can't necessarily do great product design. And nowhere is that more prudent than in user interface design. If you don't know what your customers are doing with the product, you can't really do that. I've always maintained that engineers are the worst people to work on UIs alone.
But I'll go one further. What you need to know is not what your customers want; it's what your customers want.
Yes, and how the product's being used for sure. And the reason that engineers are so bad at doing UIs by themselves is because we want to represent what's in the box. We know too much about what's inside. And the UI is not about representing what's in the box. It's representing how you use the product. And so being in touch with the other side of that equation is so incredibly important. And you and I are old enough, me more than you, to remember when UIs were a couple of switches or buttons and a couple of lights, and those were easy. You read some signs on a panel, some labels on a panel, and you knew what flip to switch or switch to flip. And then, you got graduated to some screens or LED numbers, and still it was easy. And even And even once LCDs came in, you still had buttons because you didn't have touch. But now you have these full GUIs, and everybody wants their product to, not everybody, but a lot of people want their product to be like their iPhone or their smartphone, where they can zoom and pinch and show all kinds of things. And
That's exactly right. I think you hit it right on the head that people want that same experience. And they actually, I shouldn't say want, they demand that same experience. If I can get it on my iPad or my iPhone, you sure as heck want to have it everywhere else.
Yep. And I've had that conversation with a lot of CEOs and a lot of financial people. And, they say, why can't it be like my iPhone? And I say, because you've given me a $40,000 budget and you make 5,000 of them a year. And, Apple spent millions and millions and they build millions and millions a year, right? So you have to temper that. And I will also say from my own experience that just because you think an interface is cool on another product doesn't necessarily mean it's appropriate for you. I remember when I got hired by Branson Ultrasonics because they were having a threat in Europe with somebody who put the first microprocessor in a plastics welding equipment. For those who know, Branson is the premier supplier of ultrasonic plastic welding equipment. And they hired me because I knew about microcontrollers and microprocessors. And this competitor in Europe had put a keypad and a display on there, a numeric display and stuff. And I said, and they said, we want to do this. And I said, well, why? I said, your current interface is a knob. And if it doesn't weld enough, you turn the knob up. And if it welds too much, you turn it down. So every adjustment you're making is relative to the last one. So you're moving in the right direction. Think about what the brain has to do with a keyboard. The number is there. You start to type a new keyboard, it goes away. So you have to remember the old number. You have to do some math in your head for how much more the new number should be. You have to type it in and hope you remembered all of that. Keyboards and displays are great for numeric entry where each entry is not related to the previous one, a phone number, a lock, something like that, right? An access code. But if you're making relative adjustments, relative changes are more important. So keep that in mind. And that's always stayed with me as I've, constantly brought customers and users into user interface design.
But thankfully, the OEMs have done it, not the OEMs, the semiconductor guys who provide the silicon to do these UIs have done a really good job of making this relatively simple. And I'm doing air quotes around relatively, but it is definitely something that can be on most systems today. And even the cost part is not a barrier to entry. It can be done relatively inexpensively.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There are, displays that are sub $1 if you don't need touch, right? And those can be very effective with a couple of switches around them or just to show you status of the machine in a more user-friendly way, or even multiple languages. I mean, that's so easy. It used to be really hard. You had to program each bit. And then there were some libraries that came out. And if anyone has played with that 0.95 inch OLED display that is like everywhere, you can buy it on Amazon, you can buy it from all of the hobbyist things. There are tons of free libraries out there that you don't have to program each bit. You can say, put this up in this font or draw this line or draw this square. They're really cool libraries and are not a big lift for the resources of the system. And then you get all the way to touchscreens and LCDs where you do want some animation and you do want, various languages and things and touchscreens, and that becomes much, much harder to manage. There have been tools where you can do it programmatically. ThreadX has had GUIX for years. There was a product out of Denmark called Easy GUI, which I used for a long, long time until it went defunct. But there's been this emergence of these technologies, and the one that's really caught hold in a lot of spaces is LVGL. And that library runs on tons and tons of things, and people are porting it over. And just like everything else, just like when we were programming in assembly, people started making higher level languages so that you didn't have to write everything in bits and bytes. There are now people creating tools to graphically build or translate a graphic image into LVGL, so you don't have to program every line. This is really, really cool. And I've seen it run on small ARM parts. I've seen it, M0 pluses. I mean, with not a lot of memory, because you don't need a lot if it's not a complex UI, but could still be a little bit richer than a couple of lights and buttons, right? This
Would
is
you quantify that when you said it's not a lot of memory? How much are you talking about?
You can do it in a few K of flash and a couple of K of SRAM. You know, a lot depends on whether you need to buffer it. You know, some things don't need to be buffered. If you're only updating a couple of things, you can, update small sections of the screen without seeing the flicker.
Right.
So it really depends on what you want your performance to be like, how many screens, what's on the screens, right? It's a wide range, but you can do some really cool stuff. I mean, I've done some stuff with some of these libraries on M0 pluses and small displays, and it's been less than 32K, including my application, right? So that's really cool. And I know that because I've used some free tools from people that have a 32K limit. So,
There you
and
go.
it's still compiled. So this is fun. And, lots of people are making these investments. Some people are making incredible commitments. And one of those people is Renesas, who has said that HMI is one of their core technologies that they want to move forward. And they have partnered with LVGL.io. A lot of things have been ported already. They have drivers. They're pulling all of that stuff into their FSP to be able to do drag and drop with or without an OS.
Now, is this for them to do standalone HMI, or is this as part of a larger system, or both?
It could be either. A lot of people, because of the cost of these MCUs and MPUs now, are partitioning things. So you've got, maybe a system that's running real time, and the interface is SPI, I2C, or UART, or some parallel interface, and a separate processor just running the GUI, or maybe GUI and connectivity with security, right? That's another thing. We've seen that on some parts that have M0 pluses and A cores, and the A cores doing the communications, the security, and the HMI, and if it's a dual core, internally they're transferring data back and forth to the real time subsystem. So there's lots of cool, and that makes it really cool because suddenly you can separate the app developer from the application developer, right? Mm-hmm. Which really allows people to play to their strengths. It's like some of the tools, and we've talked about this from Renesas, where the AI tools running in the cloud, and you can have a data scientist working on that, but you can download the inference engines and things into the real-time system and have the embedded engineer working on that part, and they can collaborate together. You can get the same thing with these tools, and we are being promised some spectacular WYSIWYG for, I'm old enough to say that, but drawing what you want on the screen and identifying animations and having a lot of it be generated for you.
You said promised by who?
There already is a tool called LVGL Pro that is out there, and there's a trial available, and it will run on Renesas parts as well as a number of other parts in the industry. And it's not a big lift. It's a few hundred, maybe it's $1,000 a year or something. So if you're building product, it's nothing. And that will take XML generated files and generate LVGL with it. So you can do something, in a graphic XML generator, package, and then take that as an intermediate step. But there's even talk of taking things from graphic design tools that are out there and doing conversions to XML and then running it from there. So stay tuned to a lot of the announcements. I'm actually aware of some things going on under the hood that I can't talk about by a number of people. And this is going to be the year of change for sure. We've
and if people want to learn more about these Renesas tools,
so they can go to the Renesas site and go to their key, just search for key technologies or core technologies, and it'll take you to the core technology page for Renesas. As everybody knows, they have analog and communications as well as MCU and MPU parts. So there's a number of things on there, but the four that are highlighted for Renesas, one of them is HMI development, and they can take it from there. They can also go to lvgl.io, who has a GitHub with a bunch of starter packages that will run on a number of Renesas dev kits as you download them in their, of course, eSport Studio projects. So you can get them up and running pretty quickly.
And is there a webinar that explains all
Yes.
this?
Yes. Renesas is going to be hosting a webinar on the 25th of February. And I'll actually be on it, but I'm not the
Really?
authority. Not the authority. It's going to be a key player in the LVGL community. You guys should definitely go to the OSM site. OSM is going to be hosting these and embedded computing design. And sign up for the series. There's going to be a series. The first one's on HMI at the end of February. So we're pretty excited about it and actively working on making that presentation exciting.
That's awesome. I look forward to that. And more information will be on embeddedcomputing.com.
Okay, great.
I'll see you on the next one, Vin. This
See
has
you in
been
the
pretty
next one,
exciting.
Rich. Yes, yes. Happy New Year for 2026.
I learned you're not allowed to say Happy New Year after the 3rd of the year. That's a Larry David thing.
I disagree. I disagree. I say you have a month. My network is too big. I'm still wishing people Merry Christmas. It's
all right.
all
Well,
right.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy New Year to you as well.
Okay. Bye-bye.